I always was a child who was daydreaming, and one of my daydreams were about founding, together with friends, a beautiful place where we would build our homes and life would be perfect. And this is a kind of a child imagination, but I think it was very important for me to bring me towards choosing architecture as my profession. My name is Benedetta Tagliabue, founder of Iris Tagliabue EMBT Architects, and this is the Architect series. I think it's really a kind of an inner desire of making a better world, of making a world of happiness, of joy, of sharing, of doing things by yourself and believing in what you're doing. So in a way I was drawing all the time. I was a child whose drawing was every moment in my day. And when I had to choose for architecture or other universities, I had doubts, but then I entered into architecture and I didn't really know what was architecture. I know that my ignorance was very, very important, because then I rediscovered paths and I went through history. We had a beautiful university in Venice with a lot of history, but then I maintained drawings, and then I tried all my best to find the application. And in all this, I'm here now.
My name is Arturo McLean. I'm from Panama originally. I've been working with Benedetta Tagliabue's office since 2011. Sometimes we are around between 40 and 50, depends on the workload of the office, but that's the number of the staff. The headquarters in Barcelona, but we have a small office in Shanghai. It's representative, but all the design work, we do it here in Barcelona. And also we have a representative office in Paris. It's temporary, but we have projects in Paris that needs people working on site.
Joran is my first name and Zhao is my surname. But usually here, Joran is a bit difficult to pronounce, so everybody call me Chao. So it's easier, in both Spanish and Italian. So I started in our Shanghai office from 2020, during the COVID. So that was not a very easy time all over the world. In Barcelona, when I was here many years ago, that I was a design intern. So that most of the time I devoted myself into creating proposals, drawings, models, so that we call it maybe creative part. And also I think most of my colleagues here were doing very similar things. However, that in Shanghai, because that is a role of communicating and negotiating, so that I think most of the time I have to spend my time with our clients together, with the partners together, and try to figure out what is going on and what is the process. So sometimes maybe Benny and I, we discuss that we don't have too much time in creating something, but the more time we have to talk with the clients. And also I think the difference that in China is because things, we are still in the stage of the urban development very fast. So it's very demanding for us to make proposals in a very short time.
As a philosophy of the studio, I think there are more than one idea, but if we look at the origin, we were always kind of looking at the site. First thing, before making any line, because the site has many lines. So we were kind of trying to understand them, draw them, make a beautiful drawing about the place we were acting, and then the project would follow. So in a way, the project is a kind of an extension with what exists, with what is the situation, and we try to adapt and we try to integrate. I think integration is a very important word in our office. And we learn. Also, learning is a very important part because we like to make things with joy, and it means that we don't want to repeat and say, oh, we have a perfect formula and we will always apply this one. No, it's about learning, about understanding, about enjoying the process. And this, I think, is very much our philosophy. And meanwhile, of course, we are now very, very involved with making the place better as we have found it. And now this is a very important thing. This becomes sustainability, this becomes ecology, becomes consciousness. But I always interpret it in a very simple way, trying to make the place better than when you found it. It seems simple, it's not so simple. Architecture was sometimes interpreted in a wrong way as, let's say, the name of the founder or the main person. But I think in reality, architecture is absolutely a collaborative art. So, of course, you have to keep an order, keep a kind of an idea, keep a direction, but collaborating is making the project much richer, and it helps in this integrating with many disciplines, with different themes, because a project is never one idea, it's always many ideas.
With the Fundación Rick Miralles, we do a lot of events, evenings, so we enjoy ourselves together, especially during the summer and during the winter. We do a lot of openings, we invite people from the office, so we stay here a bit longer. And also during the summer, we do this kind of like brunch on Friday mornings, so everyone brings something sweet, something savory, so we spend time together. Or sometimes we do short trips during the weekend, so the idea of bonding is very important.
We love very much, I think it's part of the best moments in our profession, when we invite external collaborators, we invite sociologists, we invite experts in water, we invite engineers, expert in structure, expert in space, and this is always giving more possibilities. And artists are also fantastic, and we love very much to introduce art in our architecture, which in itself has an artistic part, but having a kind of a collaboration with external artists, this is fantastic. We had this competition for a subway in a very difficult place, which is Clichy-Montfermeil. It was a very belligerent place with strong people and people coming from all over the world, mainly from Africa, but very little from France. So we started to ask ourselves, how can we make a building which can be accepted by the people? Because, of course, if it's a belligerent place, you put something external, and people hate it. We didn't want that. We did want something which would be a little bit as if it is created by the people itself.
Io sono Marzia Faranda, sono architetto project director dello studio EMBT e lavoro in studio da 8 anni. Questo progetto rientra all'interno di un progetto molto più grande che coinvolge tutta l'area metropolitana di Parigi e che fa sì che il progetto della stazione di Clichy-Montfermeil permetta di inglobare appunto i due quartieri di Clichy e Montfermeil all'interno dell'area metropolitana di Parigi, quindi come creare una sorta di grande centro, anche se al centro della città non ci troviamo, siamo in periferia.
So we started to imagine a subway where the building is as little as possible and where we were creating a kind of a big space, a big piazza with elements which can attract people and a fantastic pergola, a fantastic open roof which can admit a lot of activities like a market, chatting with friends, going to the subway, having all sorts of encounters.
L'idea anche un po' giocosa che avevamo avuto quando abbiamo pensato questo progetto era quello di fare di una stazione metropolitana non semplicemente un luogo di passaggio, quindi dove semplicemente andare a prendere un treno e andare da tutt'altra parte, ma quello di creare una sorta di teatro all'interno della stazione, quindi anche grazie al gioco delle scale mobili che c'è all'interno di questo vuoto centrale della stazione, noi immaginavamo tutti i passanti come se fossero degli attori, quasi dei ballerini che si muovono all'interno del vuoto centrale e che quindi non solo guardano allo spettacolo, alla scenografia, che è quella della pelle colorata con le stelle, ma partecipano anche della presenza delle altre persone, si possono guardare, si muovono all'interno dello spazio, quindi non si muovono in linea retta, ma hanno tutto un movimento che non è nemmeno circolare, ma è dinamico, è semplicemente dinamico.
And we were kind of copying the dresses and the way of being of the people in Clichy-Montfermeil. They are very colorful, very special. And so we did a pergola, which is kind of created by weaving and which has many colors, many textures, different characters as the character of the people there.
È stato un progetto molto molto interessante perché ci ha permesso un po' di mettere in pratica tutte le cose che avevamo imparato qui in studio, quindi a lavorare con i collage, a lavorare con i modelli e a lavorare molto anche con quelle che sono le risorse del posto.
The project lasts maybe 15 years. It is very difficult to maintain a simple idea during a very long process where a lot of heavy things are involved, no? Excavation, the engineering, the maintaining the water, letting the train pass by. And really the difficulty in a project like that is to maintain the lightness and the very fresh idea of the beginning until the end. So we will see if we can manage that. This will finish in 2026. In Naples, we were called because they were doing a series of stations on a new line, and this series of stations were kind of the station of the 3A, because of course if you go to Naples and you make an excavation, you find everything, because it's a Roman town, even more ancient, so it was dealing with archaeology. And the idea was that archaeology would remain in the station. And the architecture had to be strong enough to accept this archaeology. But then the fact that you have archaeology in a station transforms the station into a sort of a museum. And then this gave the idea of introducing art into the station.
My name is Joan Callis, and I'm a project director at EMBT. I'm also a partner. We were commissioned to design the new station, the access, the big roof, kind of almost the piazza that gives you access to both, the subway and the train. And because it's an existing structure, in a way the columns and the supports were already in place. So that's why the shape, it's following the tracks, and it's on top of the existing structure that was there. During the whole process, we were exploring, we were thinking about the underground, the caves in Naples, thinking of something very heavy that was kind of letting the natural light inside, and that you were feeling that you were going under Naples, with this idea, with a very heavy structure. And that was changed in the middle of the process because the existing structure couldn't support something very heavy because the columns were in very bad shape. So they suggest the change to wood structure, something lighter, and that's what it's been built.
So our station is, let's say, like a wood, really a kind of a covered piazza made in wood, where you find trees, where you find an easy way to go down, and where this mineral piece of architecture of the 70s is broken to let Naples get in again. We had different type of possibilities of art. At the beginning we had this wonderful roof covered in ceramic, which is a material from Naples. But then the ceramic was too expensive and it was taken away in a kind of a reduction of the budget. Then we had resin, and with resin we could call a fantastic artist called Jorge Rodriguez Gerada, and he was going to do a kind of a big mural on the surface of the roof. So you could see this image from a distance. But then also the budget of the artist was reduced, the budget of the resin was reduced, and now we are in a moment where we have no art in the architecture of the Naples station, but we are still fighting, we're still doing our best. We know we have no budget, but we are trying our best to involve some artists or involve some way of doing art in this beautiful piece of architecture, which I think it's really important. The rest of the stations have art and architecture, and we would like to have that also. The center is a beautiful concept. Actually, there are houses next to hospitals, and the idea is that when you are in a hospital, of course they cure you, but you feel very bad. So if you go in a small place next to the hospital, which looks like home, you can really relax.
Well, the Calida project, they choose the name after, no? But it works very well with the project because it's very warm. And that's what we were trying to do something not warm in the sense that it's not cold, but that it's really inviting the people and you feel almost at home. No? That was kind of the philosophy behind the project. No? And we were lucky that we had a very nice garden around it, and that all the kind of interior was always connected to some kind of exterior, no? Like being in a garden.
It's a very easy idea, isn't it? And this was invented by a woman called Maggie Keswick. She was the wife of Charles Jenks. They were architects doing landscape design with a lot of fantastic architect friends. And when Maggie got ill, she started to make this theory very, very serious. And when actually she died of the breast cancer she had, then Charles Jenks went on with the idea and created a chain, a series of buildings next to hospitals, which could really be like the refugee, the home for the people who went to the hospital obliged by the cure. So this was very beautiful. A series of women arrived in Barcelona asking me, please, to help them in creating one of these centers here in Barcelona. And they were fantastic, and we all had cancer in our lives. And so when they found Hospital San Pau, which is a beautiful modernistic place, this was really like a possibility of reality of constructing this place. So in Hospital San Pau, you have the same concept. They built this hospital at the beginning of the century with the idea that beauty can heal, beauty can cure. So we had a little spot next to this modernistic building by Domenici Montaner, and our idea, our philosophy was absolutely the same: beauty can heal. We tried to make the best beauty with the little budget we had. So we used this ceramic, which is very much used in the modernistic San Pau hospital, and we used it in a kind of a delicate way. We also played very much with the transparency, or looking from outside and not being seen, and looking from inside and being able to see, so that there is this privacy and also in the same time this possibility of contemplating nature, contemplating beauty. It's a building with a garden, and it's very much open towards the beauty and closed towards the hospital, which is just nearby.
When you're inside the Cálida, we're trying to make the hospital disappear. No? So that's a relationship that is needed, no? Because it needs to be near the hospital, but at the same time, it's almost kind of giving you the opposite of what the hospital is. No? It's something, it's your little house with a fantastic garden to help you to process your problems and focus on them in a completely different way.
Building a church is one of the biggest difficulty for an architect, but also a fantastic possibility. So we get winning this competition for a new church, which is very strange because usually churches are so many and usually they don't ask to build a new one. But in this case, they wanted a new church because there was in a periphery a lot of people, but not the place. So it was about making a place in a new periphery and transforming this church, this new church, in something which seemed to be there since the beginning. So this is not so easy, but we put all our effort to make a new church where you get in and you feel that this was maybe there since a long time ago.
Of the area that were kind of expecting the church for a long time, years and years, I think they are very happy. And also the client, the Diocese de Ferrara, were trying to involve them in the process at a certain level, to make them feel like it was their church. think they're happy with it. There were some complaints at certain points because it doesn't look like a church or traditional church, so it's always this, no? But even our fantastic client from Ferrara, they were really interested in building the church as it was designed since the beginning, no? Because they think that we shouldn't copy the old churches. Achieving the same principles, because it's always a church, but they were very happy that it was something different, something new, and that it was well integrated into the site.
So we used a lot of wood. Of course, wood is not really the main material of Ferrara, but the old structures were made in wood. And some ceramic on the outside, which is really the material of Ferrara. We wanted the feeling of being very light, a very beautiful and light building, but mainly a place where you feel at home, where you feel comfortable. So we have this ceiling made with a lot of wood, which has to give the warmth, the idea that you are protected, that you are cozy. But in the same time, we have art in the walls, and the walls are very, very brutal, let's say. We left them as they were. And on top of them, big crosses by the artist Enzo Cucchi, which are a little covered by black ceramic, which represents the different moment of the New and Old Testament. So I think it's a very special place where we tried our best to go back to a primitive feeling, primitive spirituality, and where I understood that beauty is a way to connect with spirituality. So I think this is a very fantastic experience for an architect, and it was a fantastic experience for us, really. Now there are many challenges. The present is complicated. So I'm open to try everything which is possible to try to understand the needs of reality in the future. And I understand now the future is going into being more respectful to the planet, more respectful to nature, and introducing technology in order to make this respect become real and become possible. We are very many on this planet. The difficulty of living together with the natural resources are becoming more and more, so we have to use technology at the maximum in order to give back a kind of a natural way of living, even in big cities, even in very artificial places where humans are so many. So I believe in experimenting, trying our best. This was always a very experimental office. I hope we will use this same spirit to adapt to the future circumstances, which we never know what will be. Do what you like and do what is giving you more satisfaction. This is really very important, and we have to try to make our profession a profession of love, which is the main feeling that we have.